Yeah, they're having an interesting year, right? Eight All Stars and then 8 wins since the All Star game. Has that ever happened?
Here we go. We're back on FT with our friend Jayson Stark from The Athletic. Make sure you check out all of his articles there. Give him a follow on Twitter at JasonST. And he's got a great pod that he runs every week called Starkville Pod. Go search that wherever you get your pods. I think I covered most of what he's got going on this week. Jason, great to see you. How you doing?
Scott, I'm great, man. How are you guys?
We're good. Got a lot to hit with you, but I actually wanted to start with the Phillies because I think this has been a fascinating team, and obviously you've been covering them in depth for years. What do you think of the 2024 version of the Philadelphia Phillies? The last 2 years starting slow, picking up steam as the season goes on. This year, it seems like we've had the reverse effect.
Yeah, they're having an interesting year, right? Eight All Stars and then 8 wins since the All Star game. Has that ever happened? Look, they're obviously better than this, but I say three things that have gone on over the last month. Curious what you guys think. One is, I mean, pitching isn't the same. Best first half ERA in the sport, ERA over 5 in the second half, so that's had a huge impact. They've trailed a lot. Offense. It's almost felt like games 6 and 7 against the Diamondbacks went on for a month. You know what I mean? They just saw so much off speed and so much spin. And the approach to that was not real good. So teams just kept doing it. It was like the offense played right into the pitcher's hands. And I know they're working on trying to figure that out. But there's a third thing that I think is interesting. Did they start thinking about October too soon? You know, it's June. JT, why don't you go get your knee surgery? We got a big lead. We're good. Ranger Suarez. Why don't you take your time working through this back stuff? We got a huge lead. We're good. And look at this. At that time, they did have a huge lead, and it made sense. But I just wonder, did they send the wrong message? It felt like their priority became trying to navigate the marathon so they were healthy when they got to October. And I wonder if that sent a message that the individual games they were playing were secondary to that. And they've definitely lost their edge. Is that a real thing? What do you think?
I don't know if that's a real thing. I mean, big league players try. So maybe they're trying too hard, or you hear it all the time on the broadcasts. They're like, see, this is the stuff that wouldn't have happened in April and May. Somebody needs to get this job done. Somebody needs to do this. That's more of like a player's like, are you guys not trying as hard? Like, no player would ever say that because it's not happening. No player is not trying as hard or not trying to have the edge. They have an 8.5 game lead. It's okay to let off the brake a little bit until you lose too many games and it becomes a 1 game lead.
Right. Well, they're not there yet, but
right.
Hey, the National League has shrunk. A month ago they were 6.5 games ahead of the Dodgers. Now they're barely holding off the Brewers. So if there was an issue with sense of urgency once, there shouldn't be now.
All right. So it's a split. It's another Phillies question. Yes, it's a marathon, but there's 162 sprints in this marathon. Is there anything to Trey Turner getting benched after hitting? I think he's hitting like 152 in his last 12 games, and Sosa starting on a night that Trey Turner should have started.
Well, I mean, is bench the right word? They sat him down for 1 game. He's going to be back tonight, but he had just gotten himself into one of those funks where, I mean, you guys know this, in modern baseball, you just can't swing at every pitch thrown, no matter where it is. And it's just his nature to try to swing his way out of this stuff. And I think they were trying to send a message to him to relax. take some pitches, don't chase every first pitch breaking ball that you see. He's really taken some ugly swings, especially for a guy as talented as he is and as hot as he was. So it's just kind of symptomatic of what we've seen from these guys the last few weeks. There are a lot of star players who've just gotten into incredible funks that you very rarely see.
Hey, Jason, I know it's been a few weeks now, but were you surprised specifically to see the wheeling and dealing with the Phillies and Orioles? I put it in the good problem category if they face each other and, say Soto and Gregory Soto and Sir Anthony Dominguez are shoving and shutting down the Phillies in the World Series, although that will be a huge storyline if that ends up happening. But I just thought there was a lot of uniqueness to it, and that the Orioles picked not one, but two players they were going after. They couldn't get the one in the first deal. They got the other. So what did you think of all of that?
Yeah, well, it was actually historically unique, Scott. We went back and looked at this. The Orioles had the best record in the American League at the time they made the Sir Anthony Dominguez trade, and the Phillies had the best record in the National League. And we can only find one time in the last 30 years when two teams with the best record in each league made a trade this late in the season. And really, that one didn't count. It was kind of the Yankees just needed to get rid of Joey Gallo, so they did. So it was historically unique. But I think it was also a commentary on this deadline. Dave Dombrowski had actually said this a day or two earlier, that it's just a year where there's so few sellers. Maybe you have to look at something different. And so you found two buyers who each had a need that they could help. Austin Hayes had fallen out of a big role in the Orioles outfield. Sir Anthony Dominguez had fallen out of a circle of trust in the Phillies bullpen. So boom, that swap made sense to me. The other one was more of a shock, the Gregory Soto deal. But he had also pitched himself out of their circle of trust. His agent had gone to them and said he wasn't happy about always just working in the middle innings. He felt like he had he's got a reputation that he had carved out as a guy who could pitch the late innings. And so he went to Baltimore and they gave him some opportunities in the late innings, and it's been a disaster. So it's just fascinating to see two teams rearrange the chessboard when they're this good.
It is. Soto couldn't throw strikes. Let's not forget that, Jason.
Yeah.
Soto just couldn't, and he still couldn't throw strikes when he went to Baltimore, and that's the recipe for disaster in late innings. Walks really kill you. But I have an interesting question for you. I'm sure you saw Jesse Rogers' report about how they're going to try to curtail pitching injuries by making pitchers throw 6 innings, and then you came up with the double hook idea, which I like, but there's only one problem with that. It's not going to work. It's never going to happen. And actually, I don't like the idea at all. So we can have a debate on that all day long, but you can't just go around changing rules. Okay, the pitcher has to go 6 innings. Okay, let's say he's hurt. Let's say because he has to go 6 innings, but he's given up 162 runs in those 6 innings because his arm's broken and he has to lob it up there underhand. Like, there's so many things in here that just don't make any sense to me. I mean, I get your idea. If the pitcher can't make it, you lose the DH. Okay, then it would lead to having teams need better bench players. But yeah, Jason, it's like wishful thinking and dreaming, because there's no way on earth this isn't going to happen.
All right, well, AJ, Ken Roosevelt actually and I wrote a piece about this very topic. You might have heard of him. He's also a writer for The Athletic. I think he might have appeared in your show once or twice.
Yeah, teammate.
Oh, the little guy. Junior.
He's a little guy. That's the one. Yep. So we wrote about this too, and we got into this same territory. And all right, let me just set the guidelines. It's a way to address the decline of the starting pitcher. Just to watch the prominence of the starting pitcher seep away in today's sport is just a rough thing for the sport as an entertainment product. And I posed this question in that story. Suppose the NFL think tank decided that the way to go was quarterback by committee. So you go to a Chiefs game, maybe Patrick Mahomes would play all 4 quarters, but maybe he'd just play the fourth quarter. Maybe he'd never play the fourth quarter. What would the NFL do if all of a sudden teams' analytic departments decided we're just going to have play 3-4 quarterbacks every game? It's a glamour position in the sport, and the sport needs stars, and they would do something. They would change the rules in 5 minutes. So baseball is facing a really similar parallel, I think. Um, for 100 years, what was the first question anybody asked about a baseball game? Who's pitching tonight? And maybe it was Pedro against Randy Johnson, right? Maybe it was Tom Seaver against Jim Palmer. Whoever. It was two stars who were going to hold the ball in their hands 100 times a night, and the game revolved around them. And that's going away. So should the sport do something about it or not? That's the premise. Then the two rules that you talked about were both in our piece. And you've got an essential question. If you want to do something about it, do you want to require teams to leave their starters in the game, or do you want to just incentivize them? Those are the options, right? So if you want to talk about each one, I'm happy to do it. But that's why they're talking about the stuff they're talking about.
All right, how about this for an answer, Jason? How about we get all the people that are running baseball to make it matter, and to because what's happened is, Dave, they're using this to hold down salaries from a player's standpoint, right? They're like, oh, you don't go 6 innings anymore. Let's have everybody throw as hard as they can for 4 to 5 innings, and then we'll bring in relievers, and they'll all blow out, and then the starters will blow out. But like, I mean, there's a documentary I think coming out on Greg Maddux. Like he's like, I could throw 95, I could throw 96. But I was better at 91 because I could last longer. I could locate the ball better. I could move. So how about we start with, let's say in the minor leagues, hey, we'll incentivize you to go 7 innings and not throw 95, throw 92, locate better, and then it'll pump your salary up. But because and we had Ryan Stanek on who said as the opener, it held down his arbitration numbers because he didn't have the innings. And yes, he was a starter, but the arbitrator's like, well, you start 35 games, but you only have 50 innings, right? So it's kind of like teams are trying to figure out a way to hold down salaries and also use as many people as they can, because they're like, oh, if you go 4 innings and blow out, we'll find someone else that can go 4 innings and blow out right down the road. That's why, and listen, I'm a starting pitching guy. As someone that does broadcasts, I want Kershaw versus Scherzer to talk about for 7 innings. Are you kidding me? Like Sale versus Snell the other night? That was awesome to watch. Like, that's what I want to see.
Right, me too. Well, all right, you used the word incentivize. First off, I don't know that teams are doing this specifically to hold down salaries. I think it's a side benefit that they won't complain about. But I think it's a reflection of a couple of trends in the game. One of which is just there's no substitute for velocity. And so, you know this, every single pitcher from 8 years old up now trains to throw a pitch as hard as they can throw it. And there are physical limitations on how many of those you can throw. So that's clearly part of it. The other part is, I mean, the analytics have made such an impact on the sport, and there's nothing wrong with that. That shows clearly that if you're trying to run a race, if you're trying to run the marathon, 100 guys running a quarter mile is a lot more effective, and they would do it a lot faster than one guy running the entire marathon. And that's the principle involved. As I said, there's nothing wrong with it. What I'm trying to say is there's a difference between what makes great baseball strategy and what makes great entertainment strategy. And for the entertainment part of the game, I think trying to find some way to keep starters in the game and restore their prominence as the central cast members of our sport is got to be a huge priority. What nobody agrees on is how we do that.
What do you think, AJ?
I think we've had this conversation. There's going to have to be a GM and an owner that say we're going to start in the minor leagues and make it the way it used to be. And they're going to say we're going to take our organization and we're going to do it. We're going 7 innings in the minor leagues matters. They're not going to pitch every 6th day, once a week like they do in the minor leagues. They're going to pitch every 5th day. We're going to start preparing guys to get to the big leagues and be able to pitch longer, deeper. And yes, I understand velocity is great, but at the same time, everybody blowing out, everybody getting hurt is not great. So I think there are ways to do it. I don't think we have to change rules to make it happen. We just have to change people's mindsets.
I would like to think you're right. I think you're wrong. I think you have to change the rules and force teams to do it. Force them to develop that way. I'm curious what your big issue is with the double hook. There are a lot of starting pitchers who love this. I've heard from them. I've talked to them. Max Scherzer loves this. Justin Verlander loves this. Your friend Adam Wainwright loves the double hook. I did not invent it. I did name it. I've written a lot about it. I think it's fun. I think it creates some great strategy issues along the way. There's a lot of good stuff about it. I do know one secretly awful thing about it, but people don't bring that up much. I don't know if I'm going to right here. Let you make me.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. The secretly awful thing is if your pitcher goes out in the first inning, you run out of bench players by the ninth. I mean, that's a secretly awful thing, and you got to have a reliever hit. There's your awful thing, and that's what they're trying to avoid. So we're trying to avoid this by not having – I mean, Ching-Ming Wong, right, got hurt running the bases. There was another guy who hurt his foot running the bases. Like, we're trying to – we don't want this to happen. Like,
yeah, I doubt very many pitchers would hit. I do.
Okay. But I'm just saying, if it happens and someone gets hurt, that's going to be an awful thing. And right. Also, why don't I like it? I just don't like it because I think the way the game should be played is if your team, especially with the DH now, if your team is better than the other team and your 9 is better than the other 9, you go play, right? And if my starting pitching, and to this day, I will die on this sword, right now, up until right now, and you go into the postseason, the team that has had the best starting pitching has won the World Series. Almost, I don't know if it's every time, but it's a lot of the time. Like if Team A has better starting pitching than Team B, they win the World Series. And the Dodgers and the Rays, and I've said this on here, what's happened to them? They get caught using their guys for 3-4 innings. Their bullpen gets exhausted by the time they get deep in the postseason. They're out of gas. They give it up. Now, the short season, it worked for the Dodgers because they only played 60 games. It's the World Series. They won it. Way to go. But the other long series, you see it start happening. Their relievers get worn out because their starters only go 4 or 5 innings. The incentive should be, hey, let's try to win a World Series by having our starters stay out there longer, and let's develop them to stay out there longer.
Look, we agree on that.
Hey, listen, not that I've thought about this at all, Jason. Not that I've thought about this at all.
No, I think that's great.
I just don't know how to get there.
Nobody knows. Nobody agrees on how to get there. And, your complaint about the rule where you would say the starting pitcher has to go 6 there would be provisions there. If a pitcher gets hurt, if he gives up 6 runs, if he has a 40-pitch inning, something like that, then you could take him out of the game. But that's not what they're trying to prevent. They're trying to prevent the starter goes out there, he has 6 innings where he gives up 1 hit, strikes out 12, and then he's out of the game. This would be a rule that would pretty much require him to keep going for everyone's betterment.
Mm-hmm. We only have like 10 seconds, but these guys want to know what's the bad side of it.
Yeah, what's the secret? I need to know.
Okay.
No, they want to know.
Adrian was almost there. I think you'd be looking at a lot of blowouts. That's one of them. You're already behind. You're behind 3, 4, 5 runs. You got to hook your starter. Now you're playing a man short. Nobody wants to do that. The other thing is the legend of David Ortiz was made where? The huge swings in the 9th inning and the 10th inning. And if you had a rule where he couldn't play in those innings, that seems like an issue.
Ohtani, you're out.
That's right.
So who do you want more?
You're out.
You could put him in the field now. You could do that.
Right, you could. I would love that. I'm all for that. He'd be good in the outfield, but I don't know if the Dodgers would feel good about that. But I like it. It's great debate. Let's definitely continue this. We'll do this in the offseason, obviously, because we'll have more time to go through it, and maybe there'll be some changes. But Jayson, this was awesome. Thank you. Obviously, everyone check out Jayson's work, and you can look back at some of his articles on this in The Athletic. Check out Starkville Pod. Thank you, Jayson. Good to see you.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.